All right, now we live.
All right, word.
Word. So,
So what you got on your mind today, man?
what I got on my mind today, a lot of things, but you just try to shed as much as possible, right? Every day you just shed something off. That's
it. Just chipping away at the mortal parts, I guess.
Yeah. Every day. So, man, where do we start? I think we should start with the breath. The breath. So, I think I met your sister. Oh, by the way, everyone, this is Devon, the Black Airbender, with Tao Lore, and yeah, we're just going to dive into it. So, when I met your sister, there was this resonance that I thought I can read, feel off people, you know what I mean? But I'm sure you probably felt her in that way too. You can tell like who is breathing properly at this point in time, and who's breathing in a different pattern in that term of perception. So when I met her, I was like, all right, this person is she's giving off that resonance, that vibe, and after that, from that scale, I can easily read people in that sense of when it comes to the breath, in that sense. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, you can definitely pick it up.
Yeah, you can definitely pick it up. And when I met her, like, I was like, okay, so this is what another person, at least like close to what I'm doing, is actually feeling. Like, this is what it actually feels like when you're in that circumference. It's crazy. So the breath just brings a whole different vibe, and if more people knew about the breath, I think the world would be different in a sense. But it's not the world that needs changing, it's the perceptions that I don't say need changing, but if people want to see a different perception of life, I think they should start with the breath.
Yeah, the bottom of the pyramid, I guess you could say.
Word. So one of the big questions that people are asking us is, what got you into the breath, and then I'll go.
I guess, like, it's a ripple effect, really, but I guess specifically just changing my lifestyle to where that information made its way to me. I get probably, for hindsight 2020, I would say my cells started breathing more as I changed my lifestyle. So then different information opened up within me and around me because of better communication between my cells. So I would say, like, I read the Meta Netter in 2011, and first 3 volumes I read in 2011, and that gave me the practical techniques and everything, and that was like kind of like the beginning of the end, I guess.
I like how you said the beginning of the end.
Yeah, the beginning or whatever.
Word. All right, so my shift happened in 2012, and then I moved out to Cali. I lost everything out there. I think about like 5 years ago, I lost everything to a business partner. And, I knew about meditation, all that stuff. And I met my Sifu, who's into Bigu, if you're familiar with Bigu. No, Bigu. So Bigu is the Chinese version of what they would call breatharianism at this point in time. And I met him, and he resides in the Wudang Mountain, but he was visiting. I spent 2 hours of water fasting, liquid fasting, before we actually went into the breath for 2 hours. And then it was uphill from there. Like, my whole perception changed when I came back to Jersey after that. And one thing just led to another when you were talking about in terms of the ripple effect.
Yeah, once you get it going, I really feel like you either just keep going or a trauma happens and probably kills you. I know I'm not dead in this lifetime, but I feel like that would have probably happened if I would have, continued to neglect the breath.
I hear you on that. So, so a lot of people ask about this lifestyle too. So let's get into it. So let's talk about something simple as soup. When you go on liquids for so long, for me personally, I find myself getting drunk off soup if I were to ever have soup. Like, you just feel like everything just slows down in a sense. It's just a different density of feeling in that sense, and you just feel everything just slows down, and it's just like a crash. It's like a sugar crash too. And that's how I would describe my, if I were to ever have soup again. But yeah, hot. What's your take on someone who's been on liquids for so long when it comes to different densities?
I mean, you do feel it immediately, man. The changes, like, any little change, you do feel it.
Yeah.
Like, it just becomes so sensitive, but you're grateful.
Say it again?
Well, you're grateful for the sensitivity, but it's like a hell of a responsibility.
Yeah. And speaking of responsibility, like, I just got to the point where, we really have to, at this point in time, there's monstrosities happening every day. That's my take. This is the whole thing that's going on isn't nothing new, but my take on going back to responsibility, I think we each have a responsibility. And when I look at like fasting, I'm like, I'm not just fasting for myself at this point, especially when going back to what you said, knowing the different densities. It's like you're fasting for everybody at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I look at everybody as literally a walking orgone pyramid, or just a walking crystal. So that's another thing that I integrated with the breath. I looked at Tesla's work, and I integrated that into the breath, including pranayama. And you just understand, I wouldn't say understand, but you just, the breath will take you and teach you that we're all crystals in that sense. And we all have a power resonance that can, really light some stuff up in this dimension and age.
Yeah, I mean, if people were to really crystallize fully or crystallize or whatever, and the full development of the human species and plants and animals that was to occur, then communication between everything would just be a lot better. Because, I mean, the breath, and we communicate in other ways, in other rudimentary ways, but like ultimately the breath is the most, I guess, true communication.
And that's why I go in deep with alchemy breathwork. That's why I call it alchemy breathwork. The alchemical responses with the breath, and you can do so many things. Life itself is a trip when you be more in tune with the breath. You know what I mean? So, going back to communication, if you look at the first early languages, it's literally like click language. In the African language, that's like the first known, around the first origin of language in that sense. The early ages of language itself. It's literally like click language. It's like, and that's how they would talk. And when you look at that, you're like, all right, what were they talking beforehand? You know what I mean? And then you look, like and then you look at whistling.
Like a degradation of language, kind of.
Yeah. So I looked at that. I'm like, they were probably whistling, and then from there, they were probably silent and communicated with the breath in many different aspects of that, in terms of telekinesis and in that essence. And When we look at all those things in terms of quote unquote powers, we're doing it every second and every moment. It's just part of life. It shouldn't be a awe in that sense, if you know what I mean. And yeah, the breath itself has so much value that we don't see. When I look at a building, I see how many people did it take, how many breaths did it take those workers to create that building. Or if I look at a car, I'm like, how many breaths it took to make that car. How many breaths did it take to build that school, in terms of, the politicians breathing a certain way, and different paradigms of breath and different emotions that went into all this. That's how I literally look at things. It's crazy.
There's a summation of breath here. I mean, money is basically breath.
Yeah, and it's like looking at breath currency in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I call the lungs spirit wallets. So the breath, when the breath enters the lungs, it's just a wallet. It's an exhale, inhale, and it's just an equal exchange of value in that sense. And that's really harmony, and that's what I hope most people can see at this point in terms of harmonic balance. Because sure, there's lots of chaos, but as I always say, natural law will always be. In that sense, natural law will always be. So if there's more chaos, there's definitely more light and more harmony within the chaos. We just have to see that.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't break laws, that's kind of like, I guess, a distraction, of things, people creating rules and ideologies that can be broken, but the laws are really inalienable and they can't be broken. So it's the foundation really for the existence. So it kind of is like the only way to really have faith is through law. Like real law, though, real universal laws that are unbreakable. Like, you get what you give, so you kind of don't have to worry about the distractions between the exchange, because ultimately where you gave from. No point in being so concerned with the result, because the process in which, the way you handled the process where you were living from when you were going through the process of giving.
Right. And the process, even with the breath, there's like different forms of breath work, however you want to describe it, whatever. But, some people say, I'm exhaling what no longer serves me. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, every exhale, every inhale serves you at some degree. It takes 3 days for the same breath that you breathe to come back to you. So even looking at that number 3, when that scientific report came out, I'm like, number 3, there it is, 369. It's Fibonacci sequence. It's in everything in that sense. So whenever you're breathing in panic, whenever you're breathing in anxiety, one must know the dark to know the light in that sense. And dark in itself has total value. I try to abstain from like unnatural light in that sense. So, when you tie it into melanin and the melanin reaction, that's another thing I notice, on this path, that I really react differently to unnatural light. Like I just feel it, when I was living in Jersey, I was with a bunch of roommates, and they always ask me, why are you in the dark like that? I'm like, bruh. Do you know?
Yeah, you're like, man, I have to, my body's taking this light in, and I have to complete it and make it real for it to go through me.
And are you familiar with Burma?
No.
You're not familiar with Burma? All right,
I mean, maybe I am. I don't know. There's been a lot of readings and a lot of things going on. I don't know what is it.
Burma is a place, I think it's close to Tibet. I could be totally wrong, but Burma is a place where a certain I don't want to say cult, but a certain group of monks reside, and
Sounds familiar. I don't know if I, you know what I mean? I don't want to jump and say, yeah, I know.
I think the 1,000-year-old monk that's still alive over there.
I've seen a picture of that guy.
Yeah. So yeah, going into that, you know, just the knowledge of what the breath attracts to you is pretty interesting in itself. You know, things like that, things like Pralajani, and you know, so many things are so possible with the breath. So if people can see that the breath is a foundation of everything that we perceive in life, I think, you know, that's a real big start for human consciousness as a whole. And I feel very blessed. I'm sure you feel very blessed to just be part of the knowing and the doing, you know, with the breath. And it's leading us to many different interesting places, but it's leading us on the same path of growth in that sense. You know, I look at the breath, you know, the breath is so harmonious and so royal. It's so royal. You know, the only way to make nitric oxide is only through the nose, right? So you don't make it through the mouth at all. And nitric oxide is a building foundation of all different proteins of the body. And when you look at that, you're like, that's how royal the breath is. The breath comes from the top, and it comes from the top, you know, expressing itself to the fullest, so you can feel to the fullest. And it feeds black, white. It feeds all criminals. It feeds everybody. You know, the breath is in the middle. The breath is so harmonious and so merciful in that sense. It's so full of mercy. It's so full of mercy that, you know, it wants to be used, and it's available. If it didn't want to be used, we wouldn't be breathing it in.
Yeah, it's the good man's refuge and the bad man. The good man's treasure and the bad man's refuge. It doesn't. It's not partisan at all. It's just always available.
Always. So, what other topics you want to get into right now?
Man, really, you know, it's what you can take it wherever you want to go with it, man. I was just taking a drive, and if I cut out, I'll call you right back, because I might go to a dead spot in a second here, but I'll call you right back if it does cut out. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. Okay. But we can talk about whatever, though.
All right. I would say let's talk about sovereignty. You want to go into sovereignty? And what does sovereignty mean to you?
I feel like it's something that's bestowed, I guess, from your choice identity, and nobody can give it to you, and, you know, I don't really feel like it's something you have to take because it is. It's just that you gotta, I guess, assert it in the moments where it needs to be asserted, but it's not something anybody can give you or take from you.
Yeah, when I look at what's your take on the Moors?
Oh man, I mean, probably, I guess more coming from Morocco, coming from ultimately probably eastern parts of Africa. You know, probably coming out of a mystery school that when the kingdom fell, they tried to keep it together, and they tried to teach Europe, and you know, vanity kind of ran through the Moors, and it fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, you look at all these different factions of what is society in that sense, and you know, to really, if one really wants to be sovereign, you know, it all starts in the mind as well. And what feeds the mind? Again, going back to the breath. Everything feeds.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't get away from it.
No, you can't. You can't. It's just too much. It's just too. Well, not too much. It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Or, you know, however you want to look at it, man. It's something that allows for something. You know, wow.
Yeah, it's enough.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have this saying that every day gets better with the breath. If somebody asks me how's your day going, I'm like every day gets better with the breath, and I attach I try I have like, so 1 week I'll go with just thinking of being blank, just focus on quote unquote nirvana or however you want to describe it. Just try to be blank as possible with the breath and just focus on the breath, and then the next week I'll focus on manifestation or different things of that nature with the breath. And every time I switch to the next week, it's like a hard switch that I feel in my brain. Like you definitely feel it. It's like letting go. It's a force. It's a real force. And when you get in tune, and that's what alchemy is, everyone's doing alchemy at some level. I have this saying, what you do frequently is your frequency. And when you get in tune into that rhythm, it's like you really feel a hard switch in your brain. And if life, that week when I'm in letting go and letting go and letting go and letting go, I just feel like I'm on a roller coaster in terms of, like, I lose perception of time. I wake up sometimes, after like a 4-hour nap or 3-hour nap, I wake up and I'm like, I don't even know what day it is. And it's just a human experience that if someone really wants to feel, they really need to get in tune with the breath, because that's where the human experience started.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because usually this is...
Say it again?
What?
Say it again? I think you cut out.
If you give me like a mile, I'll probably be back to...
Oh, okay. All right, you gonna call me back?
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you right now.
Alright, it's clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna tell you, the breath is pretty much just dragging my body at this point, man. It's like once you get too much into it, I guess there's no like getting away from it. Like you can try to run from it and try to go and do other things, and it's just constantly like it's almost like I guess an allowance in a sense where it's like, yeah, you can try. You got only but so many hours until you're gonna get back into a session and get back on this algorithm. Like, you can try and break it as much as you want, but it just becomes stupid to break. It just becomes so much more enjoyable. It's just so much more enjoyable than whatever else you thought about doing.
So going into letting go, how do you feel like, so, all right, let's get into this then. So a lot of people say that, you guys do a lot of breath work, whatever, you must be having out-of-body trips or whatever, but in actuality, you're more in your body, if anything. I'd say it's an inner body experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's really the definition of spirituality is full embodiment, full inhabitation, full presence in the moment, in the whole body. So yeah, like it stops desiring projection, and it's just more so, just feeling the whole moment, being the moment, being the whole setting, and not having any separation anywhere within or without. So it's just, why would you want to escape, out of body experience? Like, it's like, why? Why would I want to leave? That's it.
So going back to the outer body experience, what's your take on Pralajani recently?
I don't know anything about him recently. I watched Pralajani some years back, and
Yeah.
It was compelling. I never met him, and all I seen was the MSNBC thing. I think it was when they had him in the room for 10 days, and that's really the only thing I know about him. So I can't really speak any more on the guy than that.
Word.
Something happened recently?
Yeah, he recently passed, but he passed into the other side. But I felt like he chose to do it in that sense, because before his passing, he said, "I want to go back to my hometown," or whatever. So I feel like he chose to do it. But when I look at monks who reach quote unquote rainbow body, I feel like if they were to bury him, like I don't feel like his body would decay. So what's your take on cleansing the body, and if someone were to choose to quote unquote leave the earth in that sense, do you believe the body would decay or not? Because when we look at mummies, I'm like, were they quote unquote breatharians? Because some of the mummies from Egypt, their body isn't really decay, even beyond the whole mummification process. Some bodies weren't really mummified. They literally reminded me of that one monk they had in a box in Tibet, and they did a CT scan. He's literally alive, and he's like mummified. So what's your take on that?
I mean, first of all, like, I would like to say that, even if I was to die tomorrow, I would still not feel like I wasted any time by aligning with the breath, because I feel like with the breath, you live until you die, whether it's tomorrow or in 1,000 years. I feel like I've never went into a breath session and came out of it and been like, I wish I did something else at that time.
Word.
So I really feel like regardless of how long you live, you live until you die with the breath. But as far as the bones, I feel like they might be immortal. The bones themselves, you might be able to reform if they stay in place. I don't know. I can't say I consciously have ever done it, but something tells me that nobody's really ever dead. Especially if the bones are intact and in order. I feel like maybe you can formulate from that. Just against a shot in the dark, I feel like, just something that I intuitively feel like is possible. So yeah, I don't feel like, anything's necessarily dead. It's an energy thing. So, and, the blood is coming out of the marrow. So as long as that's intact, I don't know how you would go about reforming from the bone, but I feel like if that's all in place, maybe you could just regenerate kind of like a seed. I don't know. I feel like it's definitely compelling, though. I feel like if it happened, I wouldn't be surprised,
Yeah, that's a good take on it. That's the deepest take I've heard so far. So, thank you for sharing that one. That was good. Next thing is I want to get into. I get a lot of this question is people who go on fruitarian diets or fasting diets, and they always have bloating problems, right? So my take on it is they need to focus on breath work that slows down the breath and activates the parasympathetic, to heat up the body. But what's your take on that?
Bloating itself?
Yeah.
Man, just unprocessed emotion. Typically, it's people being really bitter, taking on more external sweets than they really need. It's just this idea of I guess, needing more and gorging and feeling full and everything. And your stomach is the size of your fist. And anytime you take on more than that, you're going to start the autobrewery syndrome, and you're going to expand the fungus, and then, basically be a yeast factory. So, the ethanol in the fruit is getting converted into alcohol, and then the thrush feed off the alcohol, and then then they expand, and so you're definitely bloating because the yeast is expanding, the candida is expanding. So it's really kind of like their expansion more than anything.
Yeah, I'll tell you why I had to give up peanut butter with the whole smoothie thing. I think this was either last year. So I was like 80% liquids before I went 100% liquids. But when I was 80%, I had smoothies. I had this smoothie with peanut butter with it. There was a lot of peanut butter in there, and I had a breathwork session, like literally the next morning. And when I woke up, like I was in pain. Like I've had that pain before, but it was just deep, just off a smoothie. I'm like, it's definitely the peanuts. The peanuts.
Yeah, oil and all that, and the hybridness.
Yeah. The peanuts. I think that was the main psychological thing that really like pushed me into going 100% too. And it's like, why does, like, if people knew how much pain they're actually putting themselves through, they would be. Well, we can get into how it affects society too, because I think we both have an understanding or a feeling of how we perceive that. But if people knew what their kidneys are going through when they're eating and drinking at the same time, if people knew, what yeah. One of the crazy things that surprised people is like pulsations all over my body. So I say, hey, feel this part. I'm like, your whole body is supposed to pulsate, and your whole body, you're supposed to feel what your kidneys are pulsing at. You're supposed to feel your feet pulsing when you earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everything's breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a crazy thing, man. I mean, like, it really is just the communication between the organs, and as soon as you change once you bloat it and block the breath, there's so many breaths that go into just, I guess, re-digging that garbage out of there, getting all that garbage out of there, letting everything breathe again. It's like, the more you're doing the breath work, the more you're like, man, I just spent an hour undoing so much, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. So that was a big factor for me going on this journey too. Like one morning, I just woke up one morning. I felt it started with the pelvic floor. I already been pulsating my pelvic floor enough, so I already know what that feels like. And the next morning, I wake up and then I feel pulsation there. Then I feel pulsation there. And then, in my head, I'm like, we don't have 7 chakras. We have literally thousands of chakras in the body just pulsating all at once. When I look at pores, I look at AKA portals. That's what they are too. They're portals, with the blood. It reminds me of, the Reiki symbol with the spiral. That's all I look at when I look at my body. They're literally all portals. And we're literally all walking portals in that sense, embodying and holding the spirit. So, with that being said, what how often do you sleep at this point?
You kind of broke up. You said how often I sleep?
Yeah, how often do you sleep at this point?
My head hits the pillow about 2:30, 3 a.m. and I feel like I get to sleep probably about 3:30-ish usually. But I can't sleep once the sun comes up, so I usually wake up at like 7, or the dogs that I got, they always wake me up. So usually about 4.5 hours, that's pretty much what I'm getting now. And like, at some level when I first kind of got locked into this cycle, it was like, man, this is crazy. But now it's just like, I kind of feel like that universal identity thing where it's like, oh, well, I guess life is getting up right now. I'm waking up and I'm going to sleep, in accord with life, and I don't have a choice. It's kind of like the universal will, but it's like I'm on a roller coaster. Yeah. But it's what I want ultimately, so I just like, okay, so we're doing.
I'm just flowing. I'm not.
Yeah, I guess you gotta accept it.
Yeah, you just got to accept it at this point. So yeah, I think that 4 hour, 3 hour mark is it's like, I think it's like the universal thing, when you're breathing properly at this point, like 3 to 4 hours ish. But sleep is really just unconscious breath work in
Yeah.
actuality. I got to the point where I sleep upright. I've been experimenting with that. So I've been sleeping upright, and that's been a different trip. And you have to like sleep a certain way so your lungs can at least breathe, but just be still as possible. And sleeping that way, it's like the main focus in order for you to sleep that way is just giving into the stillness. Is like people, if anyone asks me to train them that way, I'm like, all right, you just mentally you just have to give into the stillness. Like, a lot of people have a hard time being still.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and you already know that already ties into diet. People rolling back and forth.
yeah. I mean, and the more that you eat, the more that you want to sleep on your side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, as soon as it really is kind of like, okay, I'm going back into the void or whatever, going back into that complete stillness, and like, you need less and less of it because more of your body is quiet and more still, and then once you reach that point, it's like you're beginning to wake up anyway. Like, it's like, as soon as you wind down fully, and it's like stillness, I'm going back into waking up. And like, I feel like I have more dreams in that process of waking up than in the process of going into the stillness.
Do you have conscious control at this point in terms of astral and the dream state?
I wouldn't say I'm pretty much just available. I look at it like I just make my awareness or whatever you want to call it. It's just available to like, hey man, wherever this takes me into my, the crevices of my consciousness or whatever, like I'm just available for it. And I feel like the more that I'm available, the more that like I can flow with it and retain more of it. I'm not really more so looking to control from like a conscious intention space.
Right.
That's kind of like the more of an acceptance so that I can retain more.
Right. So, I don't try, but it's like for me, it's like I'm having a communication with my body before I go to sleep. It's like, I would say, do you want to focus on healing, or do you want to just focus on the dream state? And in both states, they're both healing, but it's just like a human experience that the body, the Tao, however you want to describe it, will just take you. So I just have that dialogue. It's not that I aim for control. I just have that dialogue, the same way you do it, in a way, I guess. And let it flow from there. So at least we got that out the way, because people been asking about that. So there you have it there. So next thing we can talk about is, I would say, attention, like the currency of attention. Let's talk about that. The currency of attention, and what society at this point is already doing in terms of attention. If we had the power, we do have the power, but if more people realize that we have the power to redirect it to more lighter energies, in that sense. When I look at light energy and you look at the breath, it's like, it's light. It's really a superfood. The breath is really the breath is a superfood, and it's light. There's no harsh side effects. It feeds you 24/7, and you can literally like build a relationship with the breath. But I guess that's another topic there. But what do you think? What would happen if the whole world right now would go into a breathwork session? Like the whole world all at once would go into a breathwork session. What do you think would happen?
And I mean, things get worse before they get better. So it's the crazy thing. A lot of people probably have headaches and like indigestion and all that. But I mean, I feel like in the next day, because they'll probably all go to sleep, and then the dreams would be the collective dream. I feel like what would be really intense. But I think in that day, people would probably have like a lot of headaches. A lot of people would have, because they would heat up and maybe get like feverish. And, it'd probably be like that. But it would be, getting worse before it gets better, obviously.
Word. I definitely agree with that. So, one of the big realizations I had was, I already acknowledge this, but I usually say thank you for sharing your breath, but it's, I just change it because I'm just acknowledging it now. It's like the breath. I feel like as
universal.
As a whole consciousness, where it's, the whole consciousness as a whole is really just one big inhale and one big exhale at different points in time, but it all ties into like one big wind of universal consciousness in that sense, that it just ties into the whole spectrum that literally is attached to everything. And that's,
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit, but yeah, I think I got what you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
It definitely is, like, it's going through everything, like your breath is going through all of life, going through all the plant life and everything, because it's not your breath, it's just that universal breath, like your breath.
Yeah, so that was a big aha moment I had. I was like, you know what? I got to stop saying your breath, because even when I got interviewed, he said, "Don't you think there's just one breath?" I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know. People have different perception of theirs, ours, and is. But it's time, especially in these times. It's time to change the whole consciousness." In terms of perception, and really look at it as a whole as much as possible as you can. And that's the sharing, that's really sharing the Tao in itself, in a way.
Yeah, like I guess in a conscious way, because you ultimately always share it, but you'd like to share it in a conscious way, in a way that's like to where you don't, I guess, miss anything, and it's complimentary and complete, like sharing.
Word. So are you familiar with the double split experiment?
As far as like what you're viewing is manipulated by who you are, or like the person viewing it sees differently, because it's all based on, like, if you're looking at subatomic particles, the person that's looking at it gets a different view because they're a different viewer.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think of that aspect when it ties into the breath?
Like what different people see or experience?
Yeah, when you tie that aspect into the breath.
I mean, I guess that, really, like, when you're getting into the breathing and like you're looking through their first eye and activating that and pushing your tongue in the roof of your mouth and pushing on your pituitary so that it stimulates the pineal like that. And
right.
I feel like, different people have, I guess, different degrees of visibility of the light spectrum, but all those other layers of the EMF light spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum that we're seeing, then, I feel like you see a lot, it's different strokes for different folks. Some people are going to see more when they close their eyes and look, from that perspective, but
right.
I feel like, that's what the breath work is doing, I guess, taking you back to that universal vision, that inner vision that's like, I guess, really available for all of us, but, a lot of people have lost sight of that, I guess, that perspective, and the breath is kind of different for different people based on how, the gunk in their body, how much melanin they have, and neuromelanin and the actual other, the other layers of melanin. So I feel like that would be different strokes for different folks. Like some people could do DMT and they'll see whether they're doing it naturally or externally. They're going to see different things based on what their body can house. You know, the vision that their body can house. In a sense, it's almost like I guess you can look at it kind of like a movie theater, and it's like, you know, this movie costs $5, this movie costs $10, and this movie costs $20, and like based on what your body, you know, your biochemistry is, it's like that you have the money to watch this movie. If you don't have the money to watch this movie, you need to keep regenerating.
Word.
You know, and I think that's kind of, I guess, how it is.
Word.
That's my best guess.
Yeah, I was at I'm over here in Miami right now, so I was at Walmart to like buy this bike rack for the back of our bikes or whatever, and I'm there like standing in the parking lot with no shoes in the sun, and the security guard comes over. She's like, "Are you from here?" I'm like, "No, I just moved here from Jersey." I was like, "Oh, no wonder you in the sun. You gonna get sunburned." I'm like, "Oh no, that's all based on your diet." And I didn't even want to get into it because, you know, she obviously looked, you know, she was of dark skin color, and she said she got sunburned, and then I'm like, in my head, I'm like, whoa. So yeah, that diet thing, like I can literally, like I love Florida. I can literally be in the sun for like 10 hours, just sunbathing, and then when I get into the breath work, you know, I just feel my skin just really breathing at that point whenever I get to the breath work. And my partner over here, she doesn't like the sun too much, but you know, when we're in the sun and we're doing the breath work, you know, she opens her eyes and she said, "I actually feel cooler now." I'm like, "Yeah, because your skin's breathing." It's like, yeah, your skin's finally breathing. So with that being said too, you know, when I'm in the sun for like 10 plus hours, it's like you're just redirecting whatever the sun is giving you. And you do the breath work, I can feel the DMT release totally different. And getting into the DMT release, I've had it naturally just happen to me when I used to live in Jersey. And it was funny because I was, you know, just building a relationship with the cold and, you know, utilizing the breath and just being harmonious with the cold and just giving into it. It's funny, like once you mastered the cold, you know, the sun's calling for you down here. So I just had to come over here. So I was riding my bike one point, and I was in the aisle of the grocery market, and boom, like I've been doing breath work for so long at that point, so I know what that DMT release is. And I'm just walking normally, like nothing ever happened, just walking normally, and then boom, I'm like, I stand still and I just feel all that resonance, a sparkle right in whatever I'm seeing just happens. And then I'm like, oh, that's a DMT release. So have you ever had that type of experience where you just had a normal day, you weren't doing breath work, and the DMT just hits you naturally just like that? Because back in the day, a few years ago, you ever see this drink called Bob Marley's Mellow Mood?
No, I haven't had it. I've not heard of that drink.
Yeah, so it was filled with melatonin, which helps with sleep and stuff, right? So one thing I noticed, you know, going deep into the breath, it kind of reminded me of that feeling. So I knew what melatonin release in the body feels like. And the DMT, I can really distinguish the DMT release as well. And when that happened to me, I'm like, that's definitely DMT. So naturally DMT is also found directly in the spine. But what's your experience naturally? You know, have you ever had that type of experience before?
I feel like whenever I go into sessions with no expectations, those are the best ones. Mm-hmm. You know, like sometimes I feel like I get too anal where I'm like, man, I didn't set it up like this or do it like this, and I'm kind of creating an expectation. But the times where it's just, I just let it happen, I feel like it really is just, you know, I get caught off guard because there is no expectation. I'm a little more relaxed. But, you know, from my experience, man, like, I've had, like, those good DMT moments, you know, those jolts and those drop body moments and everything. But it's not the light show that you get when you do it externally.
Right.
It feels like, you know, it's like towards it, and it's like aware that like, okay, you don't need all that right now.
Let it go. Boom.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you get your little like homogenous releases because the body's kind of aware. Like, look, you're not dying. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need all of this right now. You just relax a little bit with a little bit, like, you know. But if you just force that shit and like force that like crown chakra ejaculation, it's like it kind of like dispenses so much at once, and I feel like it's cool. But then I need like really like a month of regenerating, kind of like of all the DMT laws.
Yeah. My thing was I went into I did how many days did I do? I think I did like 3 days of dry fasting, and then I broke it with a mushroom ceremony, and I got so lucky. I got really lucky. We went to a birthday party, and I made mushroom tea, by the way, and I brought it there, and I finished it by the time I got there, and the birthday boy was like, "Oh, what is he on? He's not on marijuana, is he?" And I was like, "Oh no, he doesn't smoke. He does breath work or whatever." And but he did some shrooms. I was like, "What?" And turns out the birthday boy was actually a shaman. So we literally had a ceremony. I was literally doing breath work while intaking all of it. And the main thing I got from it was, that whole trip was the way my lungs were just breathing in deeper and deeper, like really, really expanding. Like, okay, I was like, so, the main thing it taught me too was like, you really don't need this. You really don't. And I literally replicated the same way I just remembered the whole experience. I replicated the same way I was breathing, and I got almost close to the same effect, but visually, going back to what you were saying, visually it's not exciting as a light work, as you were saying, in terms of light works. But the closest to light works I got was just being out in the sun for 10 plus hours, and then going into like a 2-hour session, and that's when everything starts flaring up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like in those moments of deep fasting, going into a long session, it's pretty close to a short trip.
Yeah. The longer the session.
Yeah, it's like that up rush is like any breath I feel like I could lose, drop body.
Yeah.
when the fast is long. Word. Yeah.
So that's another thing. When we look at external for internal pleasures, it's we always get reminded whenever we have deep breathwork sessions that the externals was just icing on the cake. The cake was always inside.
Yeah, it really does. And, that makes you way more concerned with the core of things and the inside out living instead of the ideas of things. For sure, it's like it's a totally different perspective.
What's the longest breathwork session you've ever done?
Man, probably like 4 or 5 hours, but it didn't even feel like that, man. I hit that rhythm where it didn't feel like it. I just when I got up from it, I was like, oh shit, it's already midnight. It's like one of those. Like, I feel like that's the thing that sucks kind of when you're like calculating the sessions. Like, it's nice to like to stay on it because you don't want to slip, I guess. But then like them times where you just be like, let me just see where it takes me, and then like you just look at the clock and you stop and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that. I just was over here just enjoying myself.
Yeah, some clients when I have them, I say, all right, when we get to the relaxation mode, I'm just gonna turn off the phone and let you be. Whenever you get out of it, you can either call me, text me, whatever, but I'm gonna just let you be. And they find themselves going over for like 1 hour just in the the slowing down of the breath and going into different patterns and just and they find it more pleasurable when I do that sometimes than me saying, okay, how do you feel? You know, it's like you're taking away that dopamine effect, if you get what I mean, because that going back to expectations. See, expectations itself is a drug.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it creates a separation thing, and it creates that whole, like, getting somewhere thing. Yeah. I definitely feel like, so, you definitely have to be in a different place, though, like, as far as what you put in your body, because, an hour of breath work for most people, they're going to have to use the bathroom. Because you're doing all that alchemy, you're processing so much, it's like, now you're going to probably have to just leave.
Word.
An hour, 2 hours in, but those times when I was really like in a loving situation, it really just more so that, like, where I just felt like, felt the love, didn't feel separate from love, like, at all, and it was just easier to not eat. Wasn't like I was trying to not eat, I just was more fulfilled from the love. So I just went in with no expectation, and then you just look at the clock and it's like, whoa, that happened, I guess. Supposedly. Where did those hours go?
Yeah, and then the more you get into the breath, you really feel like feeling is the word. Feeling, you really feel that time is really a man-made concept. It really is.
Oh yeah. That all is cooked off, really. As you say, you're no longer living in that paradigm of like getting somewhere, but separation. You know what I mean? Because time is kind of like the a separation concept that can't exist without separation. And once you like in that oneness and that state of just like conscious of being conscious, it's like you're like, what is time? But at the same time, though, funny. At the same time, when I've done DMT, it's not like that part of me gets shut off. It's almost like I have that experience, like where you tap into the other parts of the light spectrum or other parts of your being, whatever other perspective. But the rational mind is still like there, collecting time and like going through time and like being aware of it, and like it's almost like you kind of get to like watch a machine run. Like, oh, that's my rational mind doing its thing over there, down there in the room that I did the DMT in. But I'm still like not separate from it. But it's like crazy, like in body, out of body at the same time, kind of. I guess.
Right. That's another thing. It's like when Westerners go to the East and they try giving yogis these drugs or whatever, and it really doesn't have an effect, because that's literally what they're like in between at that point. That's why it doesn't.
They reside.
Yeah, they reside.
Like just crazy endorphin flow. Like every breath is just, there's no obstruction probably, so it's just constant regeneration. You know what I mean? Imagine if you could just like constantly re-up on DMT like that. Like I just got pounds of it inside me. So it would just that'd be crazy.
So speaking of DMT, when you're it's there when you're born and when you die at the same time. So when you're bringing it into the present moment, you're literally in that space-time continuum in a sense. That's really what it is.
Yeah, like it's all, everything is everything, I guess in a cheesy way to say it. Shout out to Lauren.
Yeah. So when I look at have you ever found yourself doing like little spurts of breath work throughout the day? Because I've been having fun riding my bike out here in Miami, and people be looking at me like, what's he doing with his stomach, like riding like that barefoot like a madman? But you just
the breath comes through, man. It's like Mike Tyson at some level, like, you're gonna fucking breathe. It's just like, you just gotta accept it.
Word. Yeah, Yeah, have you ever find yourself like doing that throughout the day? Just little spurts of breath work just throughout the whole day?
Yeah, no, definitely the breath will catch me, and I'll be like, whoa, that's crazy. I just was not breathing for I don't know how long.
Yeah.
that was wild that I even went through those events right there without breathing. It's like, it really lets you know, like, consciousness and breath go hand in hand. And it's like, you're not going to be conscious without this, bro.
Word.
Like, well, I was so unconscious in those moments. Like, I was just so in time and space that I didn't breathe. And it just, like, once thing, you know how it is, though. Like, once you start to, like, feel, like, I guess, frustration or certain things, like, you're like, okay, I'm not breathing. Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it just becomes obvious. Like, you stub your toe or something, you're like, okay, wait a minute, I must have not been breathing.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's all obvious. Like, even if it's little shit, like trying to put a bottle cap on or something, and it's like, why is it not? Oh, it's right, I'm not breathing. It's like when you're trying to, if you got like old internet, on dial-up, and it's like, it's just frozen, it's not going. You're like, I gotta.
That AOL dial-up.
Yeah, they gotta load. Like, the events can't even go without it, and it's like, it's funny, like, 'cause you can't escape it once you get into it, but you don't want to escape it, so it's like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending journey. Like, as long as you're conscious of it, at least it will bring you into some crazy events in terms of life, and just looking at that, what you were saying, frustration. So the other day I'm riding with my partner, and the bridge in have you ever been to Florida?
Yeah, I've been to Miami like twice, man. I don't really know Miami that well, but I've been there.
Yeah, so Florida, they just have this bridge that connects to the other part of town or whatever. And we're at the red light, but mind you, we're riding bikes, and the bridge comes up, and she just stops. I'm like, nah, just go. You see all these other bikers, going in front of the cars and just waiting at the bridge. I'm like, go. I'm like, man, I haven't been this frustrated in a long time. And then and then I look at my stomach. I'm like,
Clenching up.
yeah. And then you find yourself having that internal dialogue, like, bro, what's going on? What's coming up? What year is this from? What else you gotta breathe out in that sense.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's just like the oneness of the moment too. Like if somebody else is locked up, and you're like, oh, I gotta breathe for both of them. Right now, synchronize with your locking.
I like that you use that concept too. Breathe for both of us. That was my big aha moment. Going on liquids. It's like I'm really fasting for everybody at this point. Like I feel this girl's frustration. I'm like, with this breath, heal, in this, having that internal dialogue with the breath itself, and and you just feel the resonance like give off a little bit. So when I go to certain events or conscious events or whatever, I bring the copper pyramid, right? And I program the proper pyramid because I do so much breath work under it already. So it has that internal memory, wherever it goes, wherever I go anyway, I just give off that resonance. But copper is highly piezoelectric. But people don't realize it's because I'm next to the copper that's giving off that resonance. So I don't say it, but again, we're all living crystals. So
and then the copper in your cerebral cortex is harmonizing.
Word. So even when I sleep on it, bro, I be programming it, with the consciously sometimes before I go into sleep, do a little breath work, then consciously program it. And then people, when I bring it to the events, people will, bro, we did holotropic breath work, and people were under the pyramid and they were just releasing. I'm like, man, am I doing this, or is the pyramid doing this? And
yes and yes.
Word. And that was my big aha moment too. I was like, I've been doing breath work under this pyramid for so long. It took that memory, and it's like it's programmed. It's programmed with me at this point, and because I'm resonating, the copper itself is resonating with it. So
yeah,
it just all ties in.
You become so selective selective, man. Like what you put in your body and who you bring around you, because it's like I'm gonna have to process your emotions if you're not doing that.
Or
So, you know what I mean? You're raping my time. You're raping my breath right now. If I have to do this for you, and so you definitely have to become more selective. But that is dope, though, man. When you can just like kind of push the breath through people. But,
yeah.
I know a lot of people probably be ready to pass out.
Yeah, and now people after the event, they're like, yo, can I get that pyramid? I'm like, I got you. So, going back into, pyramid in itself, or pyramid or not, or whatever, we consciously, whatever is in sight, like, it takes so many neurons to process whatever we're seeing all at once. So the way we're breathing has a connection, going back to the double split experiment. Whatever we're seeing is, it's attaching to one atom, and whatever we're breathing out is attached to another atom. It's just all attaching all at once. So however we're breathing, whatever we're seeing at once too, definitely has a resonance. Not a lot of people know this, but how horses react to you is how you breathe. So whenever you get introduced to a horse, they will literally match your breathing. And that was a mind-blowing thing. One of my clients told me, they work with horses or whatever, and I'm like, what? So all animals, and I tried this out with all animals, I look directly eye contact, slow my breath down, and give it a nice, good resonance, slow it down as much as possible, and the animals be acting different around you.
Yeah, the breath is really the main communication, man, and things that, the animals are definitely a lot more hip to it, they're a lot more primal, so I guess it's really obvious for their life. Yeah,
and going back to the animals being in tune, 1 week I was focused on sporadic breaths real hard, and my friend's cat didn't really get along with me too much. And then the next week I focused on slowing down the breath, and then I started to realize anytime I would go into a breathwork session, the cat would now, literally walk up next to me and just sit down, and then, I just get into it. So...
Yeah, and I definitely feel like every animal that I've consistently done it around has a different state of consciousness. It's just, even just hearing the Tao Te Ching audiobook repetitively in their life, like it changes them.
Yep.
And I think, it's great, man. It really is dope, man. As far as like how things are, like how timeless things remind everything of its timeless part.
So how does your dog have you noticed any conscious changes with your dogs?
Again, I guess it's like the double blind thing or whatever, the split study where you kind of like, you seeing yourself, that's all you can see in the animal. But I do feel like, I just see, when I look at my dogs, I definitely feel like I see there's more presence in their eyes than when I see other dogs. Just, other dogs are still, they got presence and they're still aware, but it just doesn't feel the same. Plus, the diet, I don't feed my dogs the way other people feed their dogs, so it's different, I guess. Garbage in, garbage out, I guess.
What's your...
I'm about to go, my bad. What was you going to say? I was about to go into Home Depot real quick, but, what's up? What was you going to say?
No, I was going to say, how old is your dogs? And then we can just end it off there, if anything.
Okay. Yeah, one is 8, one is 3, and then they just had puppies. So they're like almost 3 months old.
Fire.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, well, this was a beautiful talk, man. Maybe we can have some more. I know people were going crazy saying, "Oh, Tao Laura." I was like, "Yeah." It's like you two would do great. So here we are.
Yeah, man. I guess just shoot me a file or whatever, and I guess we'll talk another time, man. Yeah, it was cool, man. I guess it's nice because it was like concise, and if you want to do it again, then we could make it action packed again.
Word, yeah. Maybe in 2 weeks or so, because after I announced it, a lot of people were inboxing me. So
yeah, and you gotta bleed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Word.
All right, be easy out there, man.
Yeah, you too, man. So I thank you for sharing the breath, brother. Peace.
No doubt. Peace.